This is Countdown to Kickoff with AC Boise on Morning Kickaround. The ticker, 52 days remaining until the club's debut match in USL League One. And here to describe building his squad from scratch, we got AC Boise head coach Nate Miller. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Great to be with you guys. Thank you.
I feel bad, Nate, when I talk to coaches, because I always feel like I'm taking you guys away from things you really need to be doing right now rather than talking to a couple of jokers on a show. But we do appreciate the time. You saw it. We said it. Is it in your head, 52 days? Are you thinking in terms of a timeline right now?
Actually, when you said that, I didn't know that, and that sounds a lot closer than it feels. So we have a lot to do. But, yeah, I mean, that's – March 7th feels like a long way off, but it'll come fast. Everything's kind of really happening right now in real time, all the players arriving. So 52 days sounds close, though, that's for sure.
Let me ask you, before we dive into the guys that you've signed and what your team looks like right now, give people a little bit of your story, how you ended up in the game and obviously how you ended up in Boise.
Sure. Well, it's a long one, so I won't bore everyone with them. So
we like long stories. Come on.
Yeah. So prior to coming to AC Boise, I was an assistant coach with Pablo Mastroeni in Real Salt Lake for 2 years. That was a really great experience. Before that, I was in San Diego for 4 years, San Diego Loyal. I did my time there as a head coach of San Diego Loyal before the club folded with the new MLS team coming in. And then prior to that, I was Landon Donovan's assistant there. And we built, that expansion franchise from the ground up. And that was actually my second expansion team. So this is my third. So I don't know how many people have had the pleasure to say that. It's a lot of work, but
that's an American soccer story, Nate. You're living American soccer.
Could you get any more unique USL niche than that? Right. And before that, I was at Lansing Ignite, which was in the inaugural year of USL League One in 2019. That was a really rewarding experience on the field. That was like a one-year wonder there before I went to San Diego. Before that, I was coaching in League Two and in college for quite a long time in Michigan. So, I've been kind of around all levels of the game. I've been fortunate to kind of, our route's gone a lot of different ways I never would have thought. But we're just thrilled. Moving my family here to Boise is the perfect fit for us, and looking for a long-term project to really build something in a city that's just bursting at the seams for football and just in general as a city.
Coach Nate Miller, American expansion specialist on the show here with us. And we'll get to some of your players that you've already gotten on board. And it looks like there is, I received a note that one of your signings actually stems back from your Lansing Ignite days. But I want to ask you, you've made some stops at these expansion, what is there a different feeling in Boise, and what made you try another new project?
Yeah, every feeling's been a bit different. I'll say the Boise feeling is like I could not, when I was following the project from afar, it was, I didn't know much about Boise, to be honest with you. Since accepting this position, I've learned that it's the fastest growing city in our country, and everyone seems to be moving here, and it's just a beautiful city, and people love the game, people love sports, but there's really no professional sports here. San Diego, it does remind me a little bit of San Diego from the sense that the supporters have, even before a ball is kicked, the supporters have this just intense, passionate love for a club. They've been waiting a long time, and now it's here, and so they're ready for it. The cities are very different vibes, for sure. But I will say what makes this place unique from a club standpoint is what ownership has done. I mean, when you build your own stadium and when you have your own infrastructure, that's built to last, right? I think that the challenge that USL teams have is when you're a tenant, when you're renting, every year can be a challenge and you're kind of fighting uphill. But the ownership group here is so strong, and I think they have every corner covered of what you need to be a really buttoned up professional franchise. And that really attracted me to come here, just because of how professional everything's going to be, and and how the club's going to grow in the leagues. I didn't come here to be in League One for hopefully too long. So we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, why is that? Okay, we got pro rel reference.
All right. Well, maybe not that. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Okay, all right. Well, there's a lot of possibilities.
I like the boldness.
Yeah, no. Obviously, okay. So now you're the coach. You got to put the product on the field. You got to go out there and win games. You got to have players to do that, and we are seeing the players join. The first one here, I'll throw it up on the screen. This is Blake Bodley, who is an Idaho native. So you got a local guy. I'm sure the club loves that from the marketing side of it. But what does Blake bring to you on the field?
Well, yeah, so I coached Blake in 2021 on loan. When he was a Portland Timbers player, we brought him in on loan, and then in 2023 we signed him permanently in San Diego. And that year he set the all-time single USL record in assists. And so he's a top player. And so when I accepted this job, look, there's not that many like big-time pros that have come from Boise yet. We hope to change that over the years with bringing young players through. But you know, Blake is one of the favorite players I've coached. Extremely talented player, fits how we want to play perfectly. And so when I accepted this job, there's only one player that I knew we had to sign first to create momentum, really to honor the city. And you know, it's you know, Blake would have grown up in a market where he had to leave at 15 to go to Portland to pursue his dream. And so, you know, what a better way to signal to the market that we're a serious, you know, we're going to bring in one of the top players at his position in the USL to start this club. And I mean all of USL, not League One. I mean, Blake was pursued by every USL championship team after his time in Tampa the last 2 years. So, yeah, the recruitment process was great. Obviously, it was easier because I know Blake personally. We have a great relationship. But just working with ownership and making it possible to bring a player of that caliber here, I think is special for the city. Everyone like it means more when it's your player. It means more to the player. It means more to the city. And I think by announcing him first, it was, hey, we're going to be about Boise first of all. Second of all, we're going to be about winning, which is really important to bring Blake here. And we're not going to just, you know, pick off the fringes and bring in the guys that kind of want to be here last minute. We went after the guys we really wanted, and Blake was the number one target to bring in.
That's a great note. And if you could expand on that, there's 4 or 5 more players that are announced as AC Boise signings. Can you speak to the going from nothing to something inaugural year? You said you're looking for players that really, really want to be there. Is there something like some qualities about these players, and what kind of a team are you looking to build here from nothing?
Yeah, it's a unique experience to be an expansion team. And so there's a certain type of mental approach to like wanting to be involved in the community, first of all. Second of all, like it is a challenge to start something from start, but guys that I know through competing against them that I feel like want to establish a culture, not just join a great culture, but go through the work of building something. It's extremely rewarding, but it's also extremely difficult. I think by going after players who I trust and players who I know will represent the city really well in the field, like soccer is a very, you know, close community. People talk, and I think by going after certain characters and leaders and players right off the bat, it kind of set a signal to the player market and what we're about. You know, we're going to come in, like I think everyone can see just from social media and everything that the club off the field is doing really well and it's really buttoned up. But everyone then kind of waits to see, like, what are you going to be on the field? And so for me, I wanted to, you know, make sure that we signed like 5 to 8 very experienced winners in these leagues that know how to win in these leagues. I've lifted trophies. And some of these players are players I've pursued in the past and tried to sign. Some of these players have connections to me over time. And some of these players are just from scouting and just from knowing the leagues. And just my time in MLS, I was still watching the league all the time. So knowing the new players coming in and always, you know, kind of keeping track of and creating, you know, schematics of who I thought were great fits and how we were going to play.
Nate, how do you envision? I mean, obviously you'll have watched the league, you'll have done your scouting, you'll have, you know, checked in on the level, but how do you envision your team playing? And, you know, how do you see the level of USL League One right now? I mean, we're 4 or 5 years into this division existing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the league's interesting this year, right? Because it's so much bigger, so many more teams. And so that's going to be interesting. The last time I was in it was an expansion team. So no one had any idea what was going to happen. And I think that year there were, you know, some really good players that immediately after the first year moved on to championship teams. And I think that's really a good thing. I think what we need to make sure our league is one that teams and clubs are very willing to like push players on, but they have to be compensated for it. And so I think this year I think it's going to be very interesting because each team is building their roster very differently. And one thing, like I think I get messages and calls all the time. It seems like there's excitement and buzz about the roster we're building, but like you don't win on paper at all. You don't win on your social media announcements of who you signed. You win on match day. And I think League One is a league where players you've never heard of can make a great name for themselves. And sometimes the players that you don't think are going to make an impact by the end of the year are extremely important players who are now thought of completely differently. And it's a great league to give rookies a chance. How we want to play, like, look, I think my teams have always tried to play dominant football. That's the way my analysts would describe it. We can get into the weeds and all the minutia of the game model and our identity and, you know, how we train. But I think at the end of the day, like when we don't have the ball, we are pressing high to get the ball. We very much want to have like an attacking field tilt. And when we have the ball, we want to be very ball dominant. But a term I use with my team all the time is vertical possession. Like we want to play through you. We want to play through you. We want to counter press to get the ball back, and we want to attack your goal constantly. Something that's important for me is that our product is really good entertainment. You know, people have a lot of choices of where to spend their money, you know, every weekend with their family. And for me, it's important that the game model, our identity, how we play really connects with the people of the city and that they love it. They feel like that's us. They feel like I love to go see that. I like to be with my favorite people. You know, usually people go to games with people who they love spending time with. And so what that product on the field has to be something that is extremely entertaining and evokes a lot of emotion. And I hope we can do that for the people here.
And it definitely sounds like you've definitely had some guys in mind. You've brought some guys that you're familiar with that you said are willing to generate or put in the plant the seeds of the future culture to come. And I was actually speaking with Lansing Ignite super supporter and one of the founders of Lansing Common, Eric Walcott, just yesterday. And he mentioned that Nick Moon came from the Ignite. And was he actually an open tryout player that made your team?
Yeah. Well, hello to Eric. It's great. It's a blast from the past. Yeah, Nick Moon is a great story. Nick Moon is one of those players that this is, I think, why League One is perfect. Nick Moon is a big talent. I think Nick Moon could have played in MLS. He almost had a couple opportunities that just slipped through the fingers. But yeah, I mean, we had a closed door trial where we brought in players that we really liked. I saw Nick play in like an indoor training facility in Chicago when I was scouting. And I was like, who is that kid? I want that kid. I really like him. He had just finished his time at UW Milwaukee. Great athletic profile, had a lot of tools. We brought him in. We signed him after a trial, and he became like an all-league player that year in Lansing. And then after that, he, as the club folded, he went to Indy 11 in the USL Championship. But then I also brought him to San Diego and coached him for 2 years in San Diego. And that was a special time together. So he's gone through a few injury issues over his career and it's kind of had some ups and downs, but I trust Nick as a human being more than anything. And whenever he's been with me, he's always performed at a really high level. So on his day, for me, Nick Moon is like unplayable from the wing. So for us as a staff, we just need to make sure we create an environment that we get the best out of him, because if he is healthy and flying, Nick Moon is one of the most enjoyable players to watch for sure.
So Nate, you talked, go ahead. I'm sorry, Rob, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I did. You said you saw him at an indoor facility in Chicago as part of your scouting. So I wanted to ask, like, how deep is this scouting going? I mean, how common is that to go to those sort of small places to find these talented players?
That's a great question, Rob. I think every club and situation and the type of roster you're going to build, you have to take different routes. Like, for example, this evening, I'm flying to Panama for 4 days to go look at players. It's a league where it's a very young league. It's a league where they are starting to produce a lot of very great athletes, and they're playing all over the world. You can see their national team is doing great, and there's a really deep talent pool there. So I think every club, as football evolves in our country, I think you need to be willing to look at different markets. When I was at Lansing, we had a very tiny budget. And so I was like, okay, I knew the Midwest market really well. I knew the coaches. I knew just a lot of the people who knew the players. And so, yeah, in Chicago, there was always this group in the offseason that would go train. I knew there were always good players there, usually guys in college coming out of college. And I was going to to watch actually a player that I also ended up signing, Xavier Gomez, who was our first signing there, and I found Nick Moon there too. And so I think the key to really good recruitment is not just sitting behind your computer, and watching Y Scout videos. I think you got to go. That's part of it. Like, part of it is watching the league and knowing the players. But if you're just receiving players from agents and everyone like that, I think you end up building poor rosters. I think you got to go. I think you got to go find the players, see them in the flesh, and just understand exactly what you're looking for. So everyone's different, though. That's just kind of my style.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, Nate, because I mean, we are in this moment where clubs are trying to leverage all these tools. Y Scout is massive. I remember, I won't out them, but I remember a club hiring an executive who himself had a scouting tool and network that he brought to the club. And I was like, this seems like a conflict of interest. And now we're in this thing where you're picking names off a page, or you're looking at numbers rather than looking at players. And I'm sure there are people who say, well, analytics have to be part of this. Like the way that you find players in a modern world, it has to evolve. But I guess it's interesting that you have joined a club where they're giving you the opportunity to do it the way that you want to do it, a way where you trust yourself to find the players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, just to be fair, like Jason, that's a great point. I think analytics are a big part of it. I think they are a big part of it when you're comparing like the same thing, meaning in leagues that are comparable, in situations that are comparable. I think analytics are extremely important because your eyes do lie to you and you have to trust certain analytics, but the analytic tool has to be strong. I think there's a lot of tools out there that like spit out things, but I found out over time working with these things that like the back end of it's not so strong. And so you're getting analytics, but like you better know that the tool you're using is the right tool. And so I think that for me at certain levels, like you cannot compare, like, for example, like we're bringing in a player that used to be in the USL Championship. We haven't announced him yet because I'm not going to say his name, but he's been playing for a conference league team in Kosovo. Okay. Like, how do you compare a team in Kosovo to a USL League One team? That's really hard. So when you look at data, you're like, I don't know about this. Like this, just put on the video and the games are played very differently. Right. And so I think that there are leagues over time that you understand are comparable leagues and you can rely on it but for me, like, I think the best value you get is when you go see players in person, because it's like when players are on trial. I tell players all the time, you don't need 30 coaches to like you. You need one. That's all you need to change your life, to get your first chance. And so for me, like, I don't necessarily at this level where I am right now, it's different than MLS, want to find a player that everyone loves, because I'm not going to be able to afford the player. I need to find a player that I love, that in 3 years is doing bigger things. So I think that's important to me. And then at the same time, then building this roster with players who are going to be here a long time. Like, the core of what we're building here needs to be guys that can take us up through the leagues. And then the rest of the roster that we assemble are guys that are like high potential guys that we get to coach and help. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
One more thing, since it has kind of come up, and obviously, look, you don't do this if you don't want to win, and you don't want to be ambitious, and you don't want to go up, right? And the idea that, by the way, just as an American soccer guy who's been doing this for 2 decades, Nate, talking about soccer in America, for any soccer person in this country to be able to say we want to go up is mind blowing. I mean, I know we're not quite there yet with it, actually happening, but it's mind blowing to consider that. I guess I'm curious for you as a coach, maybe how that's changed, how you think about the job you do here, or your path as a coach, right? Because you have been in a couple different places before any of this was on the table.
Yeah, look, I don't view my path as a coach. Well, I've learned a lot. But I don't view my path as a coach as like this linear thing where I'm climbing this ladder. Maybe some people looked at this move and go, man, why would you leave MLS? But like, for me, like, I'm a husband with 3 kids. I'm a dad. I'm like, there are things that in your life that like you need to be pursuing that aren't just like, what's the next job that pays the most money, that's at the highest level. Like, no, for me, like, I love to work with teams. I love to build cultures. I love to do you learn over time, like, what gives you joy, what you're meant to be doing. And you have to follow that rather than quote unquote what the market tells you should be doing. So I think it's important for me to stay true to myself. As far as like the pathway, like USL, like when the USL kind of really put, a marker down in the last, I would say, 18 months of where they're going to go. Like, I think that was a really important, like, and really significant move in the landscape of our country. Now it's up to the league to follow through on this. You know, it's a lot of work, and like, it's easy to say something. It's like, for you guys, like, how many stadium renderings have you seen? You're like, that's pretty, but
Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it. And so it's the same thing for me. It's like, this is great, but there's a lot of work to do. Now it seems like the league has hired some people who are pretty significant people who are going to get this done. But I think it's really important that, like, the league sticks to this timeline and we really push this right now, right now. So I really hope with what has been laid out, I hope there's really great follow through, and that's not my world. That's not what I can do. All I can do is prepare my team to win and create the best environment I can. So, yeah,
fingers crossed for the follow through from the league, but just kind of like to review, there's some exciting things you're saying. Like, I really like your approach, saying that find the right analytics tools mixed in with a balance of the eyeball test and seeing players in person, I think is a great approach. And the fact that the club is budgeting those in-person trips. And you said you're going to Panama for 4 days to scout players. I do have a final question. Seeing as how many folks, I imagine, from Panama probably have not heard of Boise, Idaho, how will you describe it if you get into a conversation with one of these players?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's one of those things where, look, I think when we live in this country, we take it for granted. People are desperate to move to the US. Like, I mean, you can just see that in MLS, like, where players are coming from now. And it's like, I think sometimes we have this, like, kind of like negative view ourselves about the soccer in our country. But I can tell you from being overseas, the football in our country and the level is viewed very positively. Like, wow, like, that was quick. Like, I think what MLS is the 9th, 8th best league in the world now. Like, that's significant. So I think that players want to move to the US. They will definitely not know where Boise is, but they also won't know where Nashville is, and they don't know where a lot of places are. And so they know LA, they know New York, and they know Miami. That's pretty much all they know. And so it really is, like, you have to understand, like, this country, aside from football, is just opportunity. People really want to move here. And for me, from a footballing perspective, it's kind of creating, like, can you go to a country like Panama or a different country of similar profile, come here, and I think players are starting. I'm signing a Brazilian striker who's a young player from an academy there. And what you're going to see is players look at the US now because of precedent as a place where you can make your jump from. Right. So, like, it used to be like this was a destination after you weren't a good player anymore. Right now, I think it's changing where our youth players, domestic players, and foreign. I mean, you see a lot, like at Real Salt Lake, we were bringing a lot of Colombians and young players and selling them on. So now it's in the market knows now that there are a lot of eyeballs on the US. And if you perform well in these leagues, you can move to Europe and move somewhere else. Yeah.
That's great. So, how's your Spanish, Nate? How's your Spanish? Is it good?
Worse than my kids. My kids do Spanish immersion at school, so they learn Spanish.
Oh, so they're showing you up. So,
I should bring my son with me if I really want it good.
Wait, if I was doing, I have a 4-year-old who speaks Spanish because my wife is Puerto Rican, and I'm learning it. I would take my 4-year-old to Panama if I was doing the job you're doing. Awesome. So I understand. Awesome. I understand.
So 52 days and counting until AC Boise's debut season in USL League One. Head coach Nate Miller, thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Kickaround, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you.